All right. Welcome back, everybody. So we're going to dive into our next discussion this morning. It is on data cultures. So a panel discussion on the idea of designing teams for ethical AI. We're talking about structure, skills, and culture. So this morning we have John Roberts, former Chief Data Privacy Officer with Ontario Public Service. We have Fei-Yong Nan, the Director of Data Strategy and Analytics at the Office of the Vice President, University of Toronto, Mississauga. And Daniela Feneke, the Clinical Informatics Specialist for Data Science and Advanced Analytics with Unity Health Toronto. So, as part of this discussion, we want to hear some practical examples of their thoughts and experiences behind this subject. So we'll start with Fei-Yong. If you could share a little bit about your experiences to date here.
Yeah, of course, and thank you again. Great pleasure joining the discussion. So in terms of how we prepare the data analysts as a team in this new pace of AI age, I would like to share from both technical side and the non-technical side the effort we are trying to make here at UTM. So from the technical side, we are actively supporting the team members in their continuous learning, professional development. For example, more than half of the team member now, they are pursuing their grad school degree and including Master of Information from U of T. And thanks to U of T Institutional Data Governance Research Team, they also offer a lot of PD-related resources that helps onboarding the team. And as you might notice from here, U of T Data Science Institute, they also offer excellent certification program that a lot of the team member also be part of it. And I was actually one of the cohort in machine learning and data science. And through those programs and PD opportunities, the team are actively interacting with stakeholders, with the academic research leaders to learn the most up-to-date trend in data governance, machine learning, AI tools. But more importantly, in return, they bring back to the workplace in terms of what kind of tools potentially we can use, creating the culture of knowledge sharing, continuous learning. And from the non-technical side, I see from the summit yesterday and today, we were talking about the people readiness, project management, process improvement. That is also what we are trying to do, intentionally introducing those skill sets to the team. And for example, project management office at UTM offers a lot of trainings, and now most of the team members have their Lean Six Sigma green belts and yellow belts, and also project management certification. What that means is we equip and hopefully enable our analysts with the skill sets that they better understand the business process and value, and which when we applying the AI tools in a more responsive way. And last is strengthening all the connections between the analysts and business owners, understanding their planning cycles, understanding their priorities, pinpoints, because only that way will help our analysts to better identify which data source, which tools, and which method will be applied, including the AI component in specific situation.
Excellent. Yeah. So we're talking about equipping your team, enabling them as well, right, to
Yes.
kind of succeed in this kind of in this environment. And Daniela, I think you've been kind of living some of this as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we could have really how you're looking at that in that clinical kind of environment.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, I'm Daniela Feneke, and I'm a clinical informatics specialist with the Data Science and Advanced Analytics team within Unity Health, which we are a very unique team among the hospitals in which we develop, deploy, and do everything for our AI models. And so far, we have developed about 50 plus applications that have been deployed internally. So our team, it is composed in like 4 different groups that take us to the whole product development of a new AI tool. So first we have our data integration and governance, and that team is composed of like system administrators, data engineers, ETL developers, to help us set up the base that then the data scientists can take all of that data to start modeling. So they set up the pipelines, the data warehouse, data virtuality, and make sure that we have quality data to work with once they know where all the data that they need to create the pipelines. And then the next team is the advanced analytics team that has all our data scientists, and then they take all of that data and they start modeling. And they also monitor and evaluate the models that have been deployed to continue to making sure that we are still meeting standards and like there's no data degradation and like we are meeting the goals. And after that, once we have the model, like we have to deploy it. We have to give this to our end users. So we have our product development team. So that one has user design developers and full stack developers that actually develop in-house applications that then we can show our models or like create a tool where those models can be usable. And all of this is managed by our support team that has project managers, but we actually call them product managers because we take all our tools as a product because it's not only on the project phase, we take them forward, we live with them for years, so we have to continue that monitoring. And myself, that I'm a clinical informatics specialist, where I bridge the gap between all the clinicians and all the technical side. And what is important about this is that AI cannot be developed by one person. Like when you're deploying at a big organization, you need a cross-functioning team that works together, that feeds off each other. Like we have for each new product, we have a different working group that not only has our team, but has clinicians or end user experts that will help us develop these tools and later on implement them. And when needed, we also consult with ethicists and our chief legal counsel to make sure we do develop ethical AI tools.
Oh, excellent. Thanks so much then, Daniela. And John, I think we'll go to you next here from your perspective. We've kind of talked a little bit about building that foundation enablement and how those teams can kind of work together. And I think, John, you probably certainly have some experience on kind of that broader scale as well about, the governance aspects and building this at scale.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, so when I was with the province, part of the stuff I was looking at was how do we demonstrate this ethical, responsible use of AI at all of government, at enterprise scale? And I guess the first piece there for us was, if I'm honest, a little bit reactive. Suddenly everybody had ChatGPT available just at the end of a screen, at the end of an internet connection. And we needed to ensure that as people started to ask questions about what do we do with these now publicly available Gen AI tools, that's being done responsibly. And luckily, that wasn't completely a blank slate. As public servants, there are a lot of expectations that are pretty well articulated already around the importance of integrity, of accountability, of confidentiality, of sort of fairness and equity. So our first kind of response piece here was drawing the line between how things like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or whatever interacted with expectations of public servants anyway. So making people aware of the confidentiality issues that arise and trying to help people think about effective, responsible, appropriate use cases for engaging with the tools that were now at their fingertips. But then for embedding a deeper kind of coordinated organizational response, it's largely kind of taking some of those skills that my colleagues here have mentioned, thinking, how do you identify, structure, and coordinate those at scale? And we identified 5 kind of key capability areas that needed to be orchestrated. The first really was around the whole policy, guidelines type stuff. There's an important piece of this which is articulating what does responsible use look like? What are the ethical considerations? What are the expectations? And policy type documents, guidance, a really important pillar to build out. But that stuff in isolation isn't going to get us to a point where we can demonstrate that collectively the adoption and selection of AI tools is being done responsibly. So 4 other pillars that were teased out as part of our framework. The second, probably very obvious one for this audience, was around data. If we're not responsibly managing the data, if we don't have that data management in place, again, the whole framework is incomplete. So some specific articulations of policy around responsible AI, and then a maturity and evolution of our enterprise data governance to make sure that that was also defensible, accountable, principled, consistent. The third area, recognizing the obvious interests of our technology partners, was exactly that, around the tools and security, ensuring that there was alignment with enterprise technology and infrastructure strategy, that there was responsible selection of products, that it was all under the careful watch of our cybersecurity teams and properly protected in a cyber sense. So a pillar around the technology infrastructure and cyber. Fourth, we've talked about this a lot over the past day or so, is around the people, involving our organisational learning, development, skills partners to ensure that that AI and data literacy was embedded as an expectation of all public servants to be involved. Not just the folk who are technically building the products or in the data teams or the AI project teams, but a sliding scale from the deep expertise required by the data scientists and the AI model supervisors through to the expectations on deputies and ADMs around how they can think about AI as a different way to tackle problems, a different way to design programs. Not insisting on AI as a solution, but understanding the art of the possible that comes in our AI-enabled world. And finally, one that I think a number of organisations miss was around procurement. You know, how do we ensure that as we procure everything from services, products, whether that's AI-specific or just AI-enabled, that there are appropriate terms and conditions, that we're actually understanding what we're buying and whether it does have AI capabilities, you know, that we've been proactive in saying, well, what can a business partner do with information and data that they have access to and engaging with government. So orchestrating those kind of 5 capability areas beyond just the responsible use principles, but also the data management, technology management, people skills development, and procurement pieces into an integrated governance framework. And again, a lot of people yesterday mentioned integrated governance, holistic governance. I think that's really critical. AI, to my mind, can't simply be managed as a facet of IT, but neither should it become a new standalone decision silo. Otherwise, you just get more and more fragmentation and challenges. So how do you orchestrate across all of those different kind of decision-making processes? So we integrated that into a new AI-enabled governance process that was kind of enriched with those lenses, the whole sort of shebang, and made sure that that was integrated with Treasury Board and Cabinet decision-making, with investment decision-making, with established enterprise risk structures and our enterprise risk management team riding shotgun on all this as well.
Yeah, excellent. Well, hey, thanks, John. You know, something that comes to my mind is, you know, we kind of keying on the word responsible AI. And I think a lot of people have different, I guess I should say, people would have different definitions of what responsible AI means to them, especially if we look at different lenses, whether that's policy or security or privacy or data, for example. So, John, from your perspective, you know, how do we keep the consistency of an interpretation within the context of, you know, a larger organization?
I think with responsible AI, one of the key things is to actually check in with our constituencies. Yeah? We're talking about ethical, responsible AI because we want to be meeting the expectations of the public. We can't do that in isolation. So one of the things I think is absolutely critical in this piece is not just to operate in isolation, so we're saying what responsible looks like, because the end game is that the public trust that we are operating in a responsible way. And we can do everything we like, but if we're not hitting the mark for the public, we're still not going to get that confidence, that buy-in, that sense that, no, we are operating as an ethical, responsible government. So I think one of the key pieces, and it's where we need to lean on our policy colleagues, I think, quite a lot, is really meaningful consultation at a couple of levels. Firstly, the general public, as I say, but this stuff gets very complex, and the public don't necessarily have a well-formed view around why they're anxious or what would address that responsibility. So it's also important to engage with some of the academic community that's involved in the space. You know, there are a lot of scholars doing some really important work about what are trust dynamics, what sort of behaviours do or don't give the public confidence. How important is transparency if people don't understand what they're being told in terms of notices? A lot to learn from the privacy space. You know, privacy notices of collection sometimes just cause more anxiety than providing reassurance because of the way that they're framed. And it's not easy. You know, at the end of the day, this stuff is complex. I mean, we need deeply expert data scientists and AI ethicists and so on, because this is complex, sophisticated stuff that we're dealing with. But part of the challenge for us as public servants is how do we tell that story to the people that really matter? And the practice of trying to tell that story in plain language is also really useful internally. You know, deputy ministers and ministers also are not going to be technical experts. So the plain language story of why this stuff matters is very similar whether you're talking to a man and woman in the street or trying to equip a minister with some messages for when somebody comes in agitated to their constituency office about government surveillance. But let's not do this in isolation. Let's remember that responsible use is really about demonstrating to the public our responsibility, not just feeling good about the fact that we've ticked some stuff off an internal policy document.
Yeah, it's like a grounding kind of effect for everybody. Yeah, and Daniela, I was really taken by the roles that you identified, some of the unique roles of people within your organization. Certainly identifying I noted the difference between a project manager and a product manager, and then you also mentioned the ethicists as well, which I would say that I'll say my organization doesn't have that defined as a specific role, within ours yet, and I'm sure there are some that do and some that don't within the context. But I think having that product manager role is very important going forward because it is a long-standing type of product or service that we're delivering. So how do you approach this kind of product manager versus that ethical role that gets played there as well?
Sorry, the ethicists, we don't have an ethicist in our team, but we have we have a department of clinical ethicists in the hospital that we reach out to them. And a lot of our projects also have some research components. So all of our products have to go to the research board, where they get analyzed through the ethical lens and privacy lens and all of those to get the final approval. Because being in healthcare, there's a high risk, right? So we have to ensure that we're meeting all our, we have all our quality and all our risks are analyzed and mitigated. So the difference, I think, when you're talking about the project manager is that when you're talking about deploying a system, that we want them to last, we want them to be used, and a lot of our models are learning. So we have to continue monitoring them. If you only think about it as a project, you finish this project, and then you go and move to the next one, then there's not continuity. You cannot just have an AI model live there unattended and continue going without that supervision. So we develop them as full products, where we have an post-deployment evaluation setup component from the get-go, where we know how we're going to continue evaluating, how we're going to make sure there's no model degradation, how we're going to make sure it's performing as expected, and we continue sending. We always have these reports, and we send them to our end users, our clinicians, and everybody who were part of the original working group, so they know where we are and where we're standing. Or if, as any other product that you might have, you often have some upgrades that you have to do, and you have to make some changes. So we need to maintain them as products, and that's why we have that distinction between they're not only project managers, they're also product managers.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks so much. And Fei-Hung, thinking about AI literacy as well, this is a subject we talked about already today as well. And taking that further, though, not only thinking about it in terms of just training, but what's something leadership can do to really make AI literacy part of a culture going forward, so not just like a one-off type of training?
I think John was mentioning the word about orchestration, right? Yeah, and in the world of music, practice make it perfect, right? And in the world of data, I think as leader or as project lead, having that mindset and implementing and planting the seed data literacy, AI literacy in daily practice rather than like one-time training. Yeah, and just through those team meetings, goal settings, performance assessment, and also I think we learned from the presenters earlier this morning, education, yeah, keep the awareness, the community of practice. And so using every interaction between the data analyst with business owners, using every interaction between the project lead and the technical expert to introducing and planting the seed of that mindset changing, yeah, from primarily focusing on technical aspects, but also having the mindset that the data literacy, AI literacy is part of the practice on daily basis. I think having that mindset is very important.
Right,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, hey, thanks so much. And Daniela, from your perspective on bringing together, you talked about bringing together the scientists, engineers, even clinical informatics people as well. That is a real world kind of cross-functional collaboration, right? That you've really seen and practiced. So what have you learned about like what makes that mix work effectively? Between all of those people, like what makes that work?
I think what makes it works is like to begin, like the culture in our department is about we work together. This is not my product or your product. This is our product, and we are very happy when one of our products got deployed. We all celebrate everything, but also for each new product, we create a smaller working group. And depending on the skills needed, if it is one that has to do with imaging, we have some data scientists who have those expertise. So if there's something that has more clinical involved, that it has to have more facing with the clinicians or the nurses, I'm always part of that team to make sure I can bridge that gap and make sure everybody's in line and like we're speaking the same language pretty much. And what it makes it work is that everybody creates another different piece of the puzzle. Like the data scientists cannot work without the data engineers. And the data engineers sometimes have to ask me where for example, in the patient record, does this data live? Can you check in the front end how does this look like so I can check in the back end how does this translate? So we all have to work together to develop the product.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks so much. And one more question from me before we open it up as well for John. I'm thinking about you've operated quite at at a larger scale around building out these governance aspects and kind of operating kind of at that enterprise scale as well. But we certainly have smaller public sector type of organizations represented here as well. So from their perspective, maybe without all of the full resources, what are some of those kind of foundational elements that they should consider when it comes to say scaling or deploying that ethical AI governance?
So I think the culture piece is absolutely foundational, actually, because AI is going to be part of the landscape for every organization, however big or small. It's not just a tool for large enterprise deployers. So however big or small your organization is, AI is part of the reality. If only because, as I mentioned, your staff are going to be thinking, oh, I could just chat GPT this, and do you want them doing that? Is that actually responsible? When and how should those tools be used? So starting right up front, even in very small organizations with awareness, literacy, some basic principles, sort of a think before you prompt type campaign is probably a way in. But also, every public sector organization is part of a broader public sector family. And remember that there are a lot of supports available off the rack, whether that's cybersecurity training that's kind of available from sort of central provincial governments pretty much in every jurisdiction across the country. Policy examples that can be used, communities of practice to participate in. So never feel that you're on your own just because you may be a smaller and slightly arm's length part of government. I think face up to the fact that this is coming. Well, it's not coming, it's here. It's important, and we owe it to our publics and our funders to be responsible in how we do that. But none of you are on your own in trying to embed that into your culture.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, John. Okay, we do have a little time for questions. Is anyone open for some questions? have.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the ethical teams involved in some of the implications. But other than having something like local ethics committees and something you mentioned in clinical teams, what is your advice on getting actual advice from ethics and deontology professionals with that background when our ethical frameworks fall on a blank slate with the use of Gen AI? Do you think there will be more demand for the teams that specialize in ethics and we can employ them in public sector, or should we focus on training the existing employees on some ethical background and implications? Thank you.
Perhaps I'll start. I think it's a both and. I think we will need to see more ethical awareness in our staff, but also an increased role for specialized ethicists contributing to the conversation. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every organization will need kind of a new data ethics team or specialist as part of its skill mix. I had the luxury of operating at sort of broad enterprise scale where a bunch of really smart specialized folk who are researching these areas were quite willing to get in a room and talk and advise and so on. So part of the opportunity or responsibility for folk with broader system level mandates is to try and tap in and help that expertise be applied. And then for sort of organizations more down at the coalface, I think it's ensuring that there is an awareness of the need to take that advice, to be intentional. I mean, ethics is really just about making responsible decisions that are principled and justifiable. And hopefully we've all been doing that anyway, but being explicit about what those principles look like, even as we start to adopt new technologies, I think it's partly about making explicit some stuff that has been a little bit implicit before and giving guidance to people along the way. Your mileage may vary.
So, sorry if I can quickly answer. I think we need to increase the involvement of ethics when we're implementing AI, especially in the healthcare setting. Like, there are new questions that are coming, and a lot of them. For example, who's responsible for a mistake? Like, we follow some principles, like the responsibility principle. If a mistake is done, who's accountable for it, right? Is it the developer, the researcher, or the person at the end of making that decision? So one of the principles that we follow is that there's always a human on the loop. At the end, the responsibility and the final decision will always be our clinician. But as things are changing and it is evolving quite fast, I think there's more ethical involvement that needs to be available to answer some of those questions about accountability, bias, responsibility. So I will say, train the people that you have, but increase the research and ethical AI.
And at university, we do have the service agreement with central team, and whenever there is request related to data for research purpose, there is common review process, which means there is a group of experts and members who review very carefully and following all the guidelines, and even before data analysts dive into the data sets. So I think having those process in place and having those subject matter experts on board is very important. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think we have time for one quick question as well.
Thanks. It's sort of a follow-up question because it's related to the informed consent around the use of personal information, especially, healthcare, but it's like all of healthcare or all of public sector data should have some sense of informed consent when it comes to how the data is going to be used and transformed and just manipulated using AI tools. So the question would be, like, how can government and data teams ensure that the use of artificial intelligence is upholding principles of fairness, accountability, transparency, while maintaining public trust?
So I can start taking this one if you want. From our experience in Unity Health, we do not have, like, we don't ask patients to consent for their data to be used in AI models, but we do have a lot of restrictions. Like, our data never leaves our hospital. Everything is in-house. And we follow under the umbrella of quality improvement, so we're able to use some of the patient health data because we're part of quality improvement. And the other part is, like, we can't, if we were to have a vendor, the data could never leave our organization. And if we're able to say, okay, we're gonna share a model with you, you cannot use our trained data. So you have to train locally your new models that you're implementing. I know we're out of time, but happy to chat more about it afterwards.
Thanks so much. Yeah, and I guess that does take us to the end of the panel discussion show. So thank you so much for your expertise today.
Thank you. Thank you.